Yeah, how many people saw my talk this morning? Okay, everyone. Basically everyone. So I'll skip over the parts I already talked about, and then I'll save most of the time for discussion, Q&A. But yeah, so I talked about this. Basically, yeah, we have this thinky stuff. We should shape it into something we actually like. And then, yeah, I already talked about why personal assistants are sort of atomizing. You end up relying on Claude instead of your friends for help, which like seems good in the short term, but then in the long term, it like erodes your ability to trust people, to like understand when people are trustworthy, all these like human skills. So yeah, instead we should build tools for voluntary cooperation. There's kind of an ideological angle on this, which is like most human value resides not in the individual, but in the groups, in the group in some way, like in the relationships you're part of, in the town that you're part of, in the culture that you're part of. And by default, it seems like AI is either serving individuals or large corporations. And there's an interesting part in Democracy in America. Let me see if I can move just a little bit. Great. Where Tocqueville talks about like the ideology of empowering individuals at all costs actually empowers the state, because in some sense individuals like are not strong enough to hold agency. We need cultures, we need groups of people to like hold agency around us. This is very true if you've ever been through like an addiction of some kind, whether chemical or phone based or something, where it's just like being like human brains are very easy to hack, it turns out. And it usually takes community, takes something like Alcoholics Anonymous or a good church or just a good friend group to pull you out of something like that. So yeah, how can AI help serve the needs of communities and help reverse atomization? And then the other part I'll point out, which is kind of more speculative, is like most future risks in some sense come down to conflict, come down to war. Like, why are we even racing for AGI in the first place? A big part of it is because everyone's afraid that someone else evil will get there first. Like the reason OpenAI got started is because people thought, I think, what is the story? Elon thought that Larry Page was evil after a conversation at a party. And like the founding myth of Anthropic in many ways is that like Sam Altman is evil. And now we're all like, oh, and what if China builds AGI? What if, so China's evil? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's like in some sense, AI risk is actually just war risk. And we should figure out how to not have stupid conflicts. And if AI can help us with that, that'd be great. Yeah, so I talked about this, some constraints of human cooperation, importance of bandwidth, talked about this too. Okay, great. Now let's talk about some concrete visions for voluntary cooperation. And treat these as like kind of thought experiments to expand the space of what's possible. So let's say we try to increase, let's say we believe that, as I said earlier, like bandwidth is super important. We've been bottlenecked on it forever. What would we do if we tried to create a group that was communicating at maximum bandwidth? You sort of imagine like right now, right, we're a group of like 30 people, and our communication bandwidth is 40 bits per second, even though all of your brains are working. And it's like, obviously we should all be, if we were actually trying to communicate information with each other right now, what we would all be doing is talking, each of us would talk into a separate mic, maybe one of those mics that isolates sound. And then everyone would speak at the exact same time as fast as they possibly can, just dumping their inner monologue. And then crucially, you can't hear 30 simultaneous voices, but the bandwidth of your visual cortex is at least 2 megabits per second, which is like, what is that, like 100,000 times, 10,000? Yeah, like something like 50,000 times. So you can see the information content of 50,000 people speaking, in principle, if we could compress that information in a visual format somehow. We don't know how to do that yet, but somehow your experience of it will be you're speaking as fast as you possibly can, and you're receiving a video feed that is like a personal summary of what's happening in the conversation in visual format that makes sense of what everyone else is saying. And this will be like a totally crazy experience that will allow a group to cohere together and kind of communicate information much faster than ever before possible. And I guess, yeah, in terms of wholesomeness, I'm hoping this is something that would happen. It's something that we would do maybe like once a day. We all join the hive mind. We like do this crazy thing for 10 minutes, and then we like go and live our lives in the physical world, because I'm probably not healthy for humans to experience that for too long. This one I really love, and it's so simple. I call it deletable diplomats. I've heard other terms for it, but in a lot of cases, cooperation is bottlenecked by private information. So like two people have a secret, and they want to know if it's the same secret, but they don't want to reveal the secret if it's not the same secret. Or you have a lemon market problem, or kind of more speculatively, let's say the US develops some military technology that would in principle lead it to win a war against China. But then if it communicates that fact to China, China can figure out and reverse engineer it. How do you like sort of a lot of wars? There's a classic paper, I think, like the rationalist problem of war or something, which is like, why does war ever happen? It's like the side that's going to lose should know that it's going to lose and shouldn't fight the war. They should just surrender and we don't have to have the fight to begin with. But that's because of an information asymmetry, because neither side can sort of communicate credibly. Again, that's a private information problem. And so one thing we could do is, both parties just share all their private data with a language model. They agree on a prompt. The language model runs on secure hardware, which is already available. They agree on prompts, and then they just look at the output. So in the case of two people have a secret, know it's the same secret, the language model will just output yes or no, and then they know if it's the same secret or not. That's the simple version, and then something more complicated could be like, you have these fiduciary simulations or agents that run on behalf of you and run these negotiations, and then agree on a contract, and then presumably you like sign off on whatever you have to like sign off on whatever they agree on ahead of time, because otherwise it'll leak information. But there's a huge design space here, but notably this has not been possible before ever in history. It's like we have never had the opportunity to have these kinds of negotiations before, so it should create the possibility of much more cooperative interactions. Sort of generalizing the concept of smart markets, where if you think of something like the New York Stock Exchange or Amazon, these are systems for finding, these are systems of contract search. They try to find contracts between pairs of people who have like a standardized good or service they want to exchange, like one stock of this company or like one Eames chair or something. And we've built, like, these tools are so good that they've actually like distorted our entire society towards these transactional relationships and towards these standardized products, because that's what we're really good at finding. These are the contracts that we're really good at finding. But language models already, even existing language models, let alone what we'll have in 5-10 years, allow us to go far beyond that. And we can search for we can search a much broader space of contracts. Like, I'm sort of imagining here, everyone describes what they want in natural language, and then you have like maybe competing LLM augmented exchanges that search over the contract search space and then offer contracts. So it's kind of like, your interaction with this will be like, you just say what you want, and then it gives you a feed of contracts that you could sign. And the contracts could be like, hey, this person wants to tutor you, or you could tutor this person, or these 6 people should meet in this house for an Ivan Illich book club, or like whatever book they want to read. These 3 people should start a company. These 2 people should date, whatever. And then, obviously there's like negotiation. In addition to, it's not just like finding the people who want a contract, but also pinning down the exact contract, pinning down the details, which again, language models can really help us with. More generally, I really love the Coase theorem, quote unquote, which is that basically informally just means transaction costs are the root of all evil. We could all have like anything bad in the world that you can point to. You're like, well, that's because we couldn't we couldn't get all the people in a room to sign a contract to prevent that bad thing from happening. There's a bunch of transaction costs, like search costs, bargaining costs, enforcement costs, and all of these can be dramatically reduced with AI tools. And so I think Seb Creer wrote a really good essay on this earlier this year. But you can sort of imagine the Coasian singularity as an alternative to AGI, where instead of building an AI god that like we outsource all of our work to, it's like, no, we just use the compute, we use all the GPUs to like find all the win-win bargains between all groups of people, including like win-win bargains between everyone in the world to like solve climate change. Like that's like a contract in principle we could find and sign. It's just that our current institutions aren't up to the task, seemingly. It just has a bunch of advantages. I think it's a much better thing to aim for than AGI or superintelligence. I talked about this briefly. It's like, how do we build a trust engine? This is another way to frame this whole problem, is like, how do you build the pipeline from intelligence to trust? How much time do I have?
So you are 13 minutes in, so we have 7 minutes left for the session.
Great. Any questions? Yeah. I'll just point to this as like kind of two. I would say this von Neumann quote describes like the current AGI ideology or something. Is like we can control and predict everything by accumulating all the information in a single place. And I think I have a lot of issues with the crypto world, but I think one thing they get right is like encryption is in some sense the main thing, the main technological affordance we can lean on to defend against this. I think evil ideology. And yeah, I have this like informal distinction between the transformer and the hash, which yeah, I have an essay about this on my Substack. If you Google transformer and the hash, you can find it. But yeah, bring it back to the original point, which is like, yeah, how should we use this thinky stuff? We should build a wholesome, intelligent social fabric. And the question I'm puzzling over right now, having left my job just a few weeks ago, is like, what institutional setting can grow this? So maybe it's a venture scaled startup, but it seems like most of the social networks that were venture backed startups ended up optimizing really strongly for growth at all costs, which sort of undermined their fundamental wholesomeness. Like an AI social network, I think could be incredibly powerful and incredibly addictive if in the wrong hands, if it had the wrong incentives. Maybe it's a nonprofit. I don't know as much about nonprofit governance. Maybe I think some part of it should be an open protocol, I think, like an open source protocol for something like the liquid privacy protocol or the intelligent information routing protocol, kind of a patch to TCP/IP to handle the fact that we have like abundant intelligence now to route information. But the problem with the protocol is like we don't know what the abstractions are yet, and they're probably going to change over time. So my current bet is I'm going to build things within an existing kind of dense social fabric and build a bunch of little experiments and see what happens, see if it feels good. I don't know. That doesn't feel like an institution. Maybe it's not an institution. Maybe it's just vibes, but this is something I'm puzzling over. So if you have ideas, let me know.